So welcome to HCRF Talks COVID with Dr. Platanias. This is session 4 with Dr. Platanias, and we're so fortunate to have him back to help us sift through all the noise regarding COVID that we hear, read about, and see every day. I also want to welcome HCRF board members, Eleni Boussis, for being here. We're all here together because COVID and cancer matters to us. It's now been almost 60 days since we've been sheltering in place and social distancing. And we're also here because the impact of this COVID crisis is concerning to all of us, for our friends, loved ones, and everyone. In a few days, it's going to be Memorial Day. And it's amazing to think how our life was so different a year ago, celebrating with friends and family. It's as if those times, the certainty of those times are an illusion of the past. So we're definitely living in extraordinary times. And I know that we're facing a day-to-day where some people are wondering whether we should reopen the country earlier than later. And on that notion, Dr. Platanias, my question to you is, do you think there will be a test that is implemented that could determine whether some people are more susceptible to developing severe disease or dying from COVID? I've read that they've identified some HLA genes or some proteins in the blood, like C-reactive peptide. And this is important because maybe when the country reopens, some people will decide to still shelter in place if they've been identified as one of those individuals that could have more susceptibility to severe disease. Do you think that's something that might happen in practice, especially considering that there's no vaccine right now?
I think that's a very great question, and it shows how well you understand biology, because I think what you mentioned specifically about HLA is a question that has been coming up, whether, for some other diseases, HLA is there are some special genes that we have that sometimes they're associated with some diseases. And one question that has not been answered in COVID is if there are people who have abnormalities in these genes, special subtypes of these genes will be more sensitive. There is nothing like this that we know at all at this moment, but I don't think there have been any data either way. People are looking into this. The fact remains that many people who get COVID, some of them do very well, no problem, many don't, and that's why it's so dangerous, because many people are asymptomatic, but they can still transmit it to others, and others get very sick and die, And we have a broad spectrum there that is very hard to understand. We know that there are groups at risk, and these are very well-defined risks. There is a group of cancer patients that are especially sensitive when their immune system is compromised, bone marrow transplants, chemotherapy, radiation. We're doing this moment actually an analysis. We are opening a study here in Chicago at Northwestern because we have a big network to understand which cancer patients are more sensitive than others. But clearly there are groups, not all of them, many cancer patients do simply fine, no problem. So we don't understand well what predisposes people to be very sick. We know that there are some high risk factors. Hypertension is one, high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, so lung problems if there are pre-existing. All these things predispose people to a more severe course, but we don't understand how this happens yet. You're a very good question.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I think if we could predict who would develop more severe disease would be more important than the antibody testing, since at this point, the antibody testing, you said last week, even if you test positive, it doesn't mean that you have neutralizing antibodies, right?
Well, that's what they say, although you have to keep in mind, that's also a cautious language that is used because we don't know.
We just don't know.
But again, you also have possibilities. If someone tests positive for antibody with high titer, although you still don't know, you cannot still say with confidence, it is likely that they do have immunity. That's what we know from other diseases. The question is, what we don't know in this disease is for how long it will last. You have immunity, does it last 3 months? Does it last 3 years? There is totally unanswered questions. But I think the antibody test is a big development for people who at least can check their antibody titers to know if they have been exposed to the disease at some point. And, you know, and that's an important piece of information, although it doesn't really practically change how they deal with that. So.
Okay, and then one last thing. So based on the immunity, like we've read that some people are like, there's some studies that say we've developed a vaccine and so forth. Do you think the only way to confirm that is going to be in time? Like, because to see if someone actually has that immunity, will there be a day that they'll say, yes, we do have a vaccine that works, but is it going to take time? Like, or could it happen a month from now?
Yeah, I mean, the vaccines for viruses take years. And the most optimistic thing is that it can happen within 1 year, but it can take up to a decade, you know. So far here, because there is much more intense efforts by many different people, and because also some companies are willing to take the risk to start producing the vaccine before they know for sure that it will work, there is a decent possibility that within a year or two, there could be something that can be given to people. But this is in the very best case scenario, if everything falls into place the right way, if we are lucky. So it is more likely that a year from now, there will be no vaccine, but there is a real chance there could be something.
Okay.
The reality is we'll have to get through this without counting on a vaccine this moment.
Thank you. I welcome anybody else with questions at this point.
You're a scientist, honey. And I'm so glad that you're a scientist, I said, and you understand medical terms and you can really break down all the questions. Can you hear me? Can everyone hear me? Can you hear me, Dr. Platanias? Dr. Platanias, can I please ask a question? You say that there's no vaccine in the near future. There obviously, I'm talking about myself. I'm so frustrated that I don't want to hear the news. I don't want to hear any medical reports. I don't want to hear anything anymore. And my frustration comes that every day you hear that there's 6 to 8 people, companies, research centers that are working on vaccines. Yesterday, they said very promising vaccines at Harvard, at Oxford. They're vaccinating mice, and it seems that they have been treated, that they have no disease, they don't have anything. Then all of a sudden, you hear another report that says, well, we're ready to test it on humans, and we've already tested it on 600 people, and it's working. So you get all this mixed, you know, information, and you just don't understand what is real and what's not real anymore. We certainly cannot be locked up in our homes. The UNICEF chairman made an incredible speech. She said, we will have more people and children dying from poverty and nutrition than what we will have dying from this disease. And then you wonder, what is really the balance? If we have so much escalation in drug abuse, in suicide, my God, suicide has increased to 44%. I mean, domestic violence, child abuse, drug overdose. So what is real and what's not real? Are we honestly focusing so much on something that could possibly kill us and something that we could just override and not even feel anything?
Okay, so let me just take one question. There are many questions, very good questions, but all together, and I'm gonna go one by one.
Yes.
The vaccines, let's start with the vaccines. There are encouraging results. There was a report yesterday that they gave it to some humans, there were 8 humans, and they developed significant titers that were neutralizing. So there are already some suggestions that at least one company is on the right way to do that. However, you know, and then there are many other ones doing it, you said, in mice or in monkeys. keep in mind that in mice, when you say they cured everything, we see that in cancer all the time. We develop cancer treatments, you try them in mice, and we cure every cancer you can imagine. Then you take it to humans, and it doesn't work, or it works much less. So with the viruses is a little different, but the mice data don't really, they are not good indicators of how efficient it will be in humans, but they are, at least they drive you in one direction. If you know something happens, then you can take it to humans, that there is antibodies and stuff like that. So the vaccines, I think they could not have been a better worldwide effort this moment, with so many people trying so hard, so many specialists. And that's why I think there is a real chance that there could be a vaccine at some point, you know.
How about the one that's very promising that they're doing right now with the 600 people with the apes and the monkeys? And they said that they're so promising that all of them got cured. Is that true, or is it just
it wasn't 600,
not real?
No, this was eight people got, they plan to expand the study, but I think it was 8 humans who got it and got the titer. But that's a big difference from doing that to getting to the point to get to produce vaccines that really work, to give it as an FDA approved drug, to offer it to people. It's a long process, and we don't know if it's going to work, all the different steps. Yeah. So that's the first step, and it's very encouraging because
I lost it.
Yeah, but it's going to take time, you know, and we don't know. It may not work at the end, but there is very encouraging.
I lost them.
Doctor, I have a question for you.
Should I answer? I wanted to go back to let me finish. And
Okay.
Lenny was also asking about people, if we can write it over, right? You were saying so many other people. So I think this virus, if the lockdown had not happened, not only here, but all over the world, the results would have been so devastating, so catastrophic, that it's really inconceivable. You know, there were millions of people who died in 1918 with the Spanish flu, and this thing is much worse, you know.
Excuse me, there was Dr. Argentos, Cristina Argentos.
Is he here?
Hi, Dr. Argentos, we love you.
Hi,
Okay.
I'm so glad to be here. I love you guys too.
Here you go. Yep. Nice to see you, Christine. So
nice to see you too.
So what I'm saying is, right now there will be part reopening. Most countries now start slowly reopening, and the big difference now is that we avoided a disaster, the collapse of the hospital systems that would have killed many more people. And now we also have more protective equipment. People can wear masks, can wear sanitizers. Before, 2 months ago, this was spreading rapidly, and people didn't know what was going on because we couldn't understand the virus well. So I think right now, when things gradually reopen, if they're done the right way and not the wrong way, then, you know, it should hopefully go well. But if people start going and having, you know, big events with 1,000 people and dancing and doing, then we're gonna, unfortunately, we will not do well. You know what I mean, right?
Okay, so you're telling me now that eventually we won't be able to have our event in November.
I better not say that, because you have told me you will kill me if I keep saying that.
I know, I'm gonna kill myself, because you know what? Already people are calling for tables, and I'm like, I don't know what we're gonna do.
We can have let's see what happens, but I think it's gonna be, you know, it's not gonna be easy. Maybe have a virtual event, but we discuss, that's a separate conversation.
Doctor, you mentioned that even if we do have a vaccine, by the time you vaccinate everybody, either just in America or even throughout the world, it's going to take a very, very long time before it flushes through the system. I think after they had a vaccine for polio, it took 45 years, I think, before
but
polio was declared finally done. I mean, so there's going to be a very strong possibility that we're going to have to coexist with this virus for a very, very long time. And how do you envision that happening?
I think it's going to be, the virus can be, I mean, unfortunately, we live in the era of social distancing, you know. We will have to get used that for the next year or two, it will be much harder to have events, you know, meeting with people in person. It will be more and more of this, unfortunately. I think we will need to use, everybody will need to wear a mask. And I think the most important thing is if every single person, with no exceptions, wears a mask all the time, that will contribute to a huge degree in controlling the disease and the spread. That's extremely important. Because then if everybody gets a mask, then it doesn't go from one person to the other. You know, like the people who are sick can go to others. So, and then the most important thing is to develop drugs. There is one drug, this drug Remdesivir, that is promising right now. It showed some activity in clinical trials. And there are other drugs that are in clinical trials right now that we don't know yet. But I think, in my opinion, the biggest hope would be if we get some drugs that have a real activity. And this is what we've seen in, like in AIDS, in HIV. That's an example. It's a very different virus, very different pattern. There is no vaccine, you know, but AIDS is very well controlled right now because there are many drugs that are active and you can use a cocktail of drugs, combine them together. So I think there is a decent chance that there will be drugs that will emerge and beyond Remdesivir that could help, you know, and that's another factor that will play a role, you know.
Do you think we're done shaking hands and hugging each other as well?
Yeah, totally. For the next,
Don't say that to us, Dr. Platanias.
I know, we're huggers.
We're huggers and kissers, please. Don't say that to us.
no, it's totally, yeah.
I have a question whenever I can. Yeah. This is Charlene. I have a question. When we go out, you know, even though we're social distancing and we're wearing a mask, it's still probably around us to some degree, correct?
Well, it depends where and how.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is it's, you know, I mean, if you're like in the big city like Chicago or something, or New York, you're going out, if you're still social distancing, I guess what I'm trying to ask is, because it still may be around, but it may not, like say it's on a surface or something, you touch it, but it's not very strong. This is what I was trying to figure out. You know, it's not very strong or something. I can't figure out what I want to say, but strong on the surface. Are we going to build up our own antibodies by being, I'm trying to think of it.
I know what you're saying.
The herd immunity?
Yeah, no, I don't think so because of that. Because what you're saying is, I'm out, there is a little virus that is not enough to make me sick, but
right.
maybe it's enough to give me immunity.
Right.
And that's a good question, but unfortunately, I don't think it's like this.
It's not going to work.
No, I don't think so. The fact is that when you go out in a big city like Chicago, if you are outside and there is sun and and you are not in a crowded area, the chances of transmission are less, especially if you wear a mask. And if you are in closed space, elevators, for instance, there are studies that show that the virus can stay for 3 hours in the air. So it is very important to avoid congestion there, not to have more than 4 people, let's say, in an elevator, and to wear masks. So all I'm saying is that there is nothing to suggest that you can get immunity like that. But you can get disease like this, and that's why it's so critical to follow the rules, masks and
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree with that. This is Christine speaking.
Dr. Platanias, you can see her right there. Go ahead.
I agree with that. Exactly what he's saying.
Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the other, we don't really know who's who are the most at risk yet. We thought initially it was older people. We are seeing a lot of young people in the ICUs, people who are obese, and it's heartbreaking. We see whole families there. So we know, this close contact, exactly like he's saying. So social distancing is really important. The masks, and then just washing your hands. So it's all the simple things. So washing your hands frequently, especially if you're out and touching surfaces, just so that if you do come into contact with some stuff on a surface, you wash your hands before you touch your face or before it goes into your mouth or your mucous membranes. Those are like really easy things that will keep you safe. But I do unfortunately also agree that the hugging and kissing is out for a while.
Okay, that's
no.
Dr. Gentos, tell everyone, what do you do? How much
I'm
you
a
hire, what
I'm
you
a pulmonary and critical care doctor, so I'm working in the intensive care units with a lot of the COVID patients. So we're seeing our numbers are finally plateaued and starting to come down a little bit, but it's been a pretty long haul. But it's encouraging. Our hospital has done really well. I think we've supported a lot of the clinical trials, including the remdesivir trial that Dr. Platanias was talking about. And we've had really remarkably good outcomes in our ICU, I think partly because we've had really great planning. We've had a little bit more time. And then because of all of you, when you do the right things like social distance and wear your masks and wash your hands, we've had time to plan and control and make sure that we do a good job with every patient that comes in, and our system has not been completely overwhelmed. So
Can I ask a
Northwestern.
Go ahead. Dr. Gentos, can I please ask you a question? Besides that, I'm very grateful to you for being my doctor. And you're always yelling at me. But second of all, you said something very interesting. You said you have a lot of young people in intensive care and especially families. Why is that? Can you hear me, Dr. Gentos?
yeah, sorry. The families, I think it's just the close contact. So they come into contact with each other. The young people, we don't really understand yet, and we're studying that. So there's a lot of research that's gone on, and Northwestern is a big part of that. We're actually in the process of kind of looking at all the patients, kind of what kind of underlying causes, what kind of underlying disease states they have, what are their issues, their medical problems, and who are they hanging around. So we've done a lot of tracing back, but the families, I think it's just the close contact and close quarters without masks. Like at home, you're not going to wear a mask 24/7, and that's hard.
But
we saw that.
Jimmy.
he just came home, I have to tell you, he just came home with 50 dozen of roses. And they're all in a huge box. Dr. Gentos, let me ask you a question, please, one more time. Are those young kids, do they have a lot of underlying pre-existing conditions?
Not really, and we were expecting a lot of people with asthma or COPD, and we're not seeing so many patients with the lung issues that we thought that was going to be a major problem. That really hasn't been the case, but we're noticing obesity is really a big one. So obesity, wow. Heart disease, those kinds of things seem to be bigger risk factors for this virus.
What about socioeconomic factors? Where do they come from?
Oh,
they don't
definitely.
come from big houses in the suburbs. They probably come from inner city, congested living, multiple generations, correct?
Certainly that plays a huge part. We're seeing a large Hispanic population, and that a lot of that has to do with kind of close living quarters, not living in big homes, in the suburbs where you've got lots of space.
So to follow up on that, how long can we afford the economy, to keep the economy shut down? At what cost? I'm from a financial background, and everybody says balanced budget and this and that, and we're off a couple $100 billion, and people get excited. Well, this thing is going to cost maybe 10, 20 trillion dollars. Okay?
Yeah.
That will have the impact of destroying this country's economic base. and
Yeah.
competitive spirit.
And
So,
I think, yeah, I
So
agree with
if I
you.
can
And I,
make a point here, that's a good question,
pardon
but it
me?
has to be seen into context. There are some countries that moved very early, very quickly, including Greece, by the way, and there are many Greeks on the, and the impact of the disease was minimal. So if this was left, if someone right now say, let's reopen the economy and forget about everything, let's not do it without any rules, I think this will destroy the economy permanently. Because if
agreed.
this thing goes out of control, the
Mhm.
damage right now is still reversible. I think the US has a strong economy. The Dow starts coming up already. If this continues in an organized way and goes slowly, listening to the scientists, the economy will recover. But if it goes randomly and the hospital systems get overwhelmed and we have another collapse, then I think the economy will not recover. That's the big challenge here. And it's a
Yeah,
very difficult, I'm not an economist, but to me, unless this problem is controlled, the economy cannot recover no matter what we do if this goes out of control. I don't know if Christine, if you agree on that or not.
oh yeah, exactly. And I know that we have to open up the country again, but we have to do it slowly and thoughtfully. And I think people, again, just need to do the simple things. So wearing masks, trying to social distance, stay 6 feet apart, no hugging, and washing your hands. Those simple things that seem so easy make a ginormous difference. And I think that's the only way that we can, and people shouldn't be congregating in big groups. Unfortunately, I don't think the November event is going to happen this year.
Oh my God.
Like, I think we have to be responsible, right? Like, you don't want to put people in harm's way. This is a foundation meant to help people. And so, like doing things like opening the economy so people leaving their houses to go to work is, I think, really important. People have to get back to work and the economy has to start moving forward, but doing it in a thoughtful way without doing all this extra socializing and being close to each other, which is, dangerous at this time.
What if
I
I
have a question.
provide beautiful masks for the gowns? Do you
Can
think?
anybody
You don't
hear
have
me
to
now?
worry about me because I don't get any hugging.
I
In
don't
fact,
think
my
so.
wife is
Oh,
always
stop
ahead
it.
of her time. She's been trying to get me to wear a mask for decades. But, a little bit to Mr. Galanis's point, which is, I heard this morning, cancer screenings are down 90%, 2.5 million children have not had their vaccines and preventative treatments. 75,000 or more people will die from despair, suicide, drugs, all of those things. I agree we have to do things intelligently. I think masks obviously are critical, intelligent social distancing. I'd like to see greater use of plasma from, now we've had tens of thousands of people who have had this, so there ought to be a lot of plasma available. Pass out a little hydroxychloroquine. But, what has been going very well has been, the work of our scientists who, we don't know what's going to happen, but there are a lot of promising vaccine trials underway. There have been, some people have reported great results with hydroxy and, you mentioned remdesivir and other things. And just the
I have a
government.
question. Can anybody hear me? This is
Yes,
Bonnie Larice.
you're
We
here.
can now.
Yes,
You can hear
yes,
me? Okay.
we can hear
I'm
you.
jumping up and down over here because I don't think anybody can hear me. I've been at Northwestern now for the past 2 weeks, 6 times with various doctor visits and tests. And I have to say they're managing everything really well. But nobody's talked about whether or not I should have a test. I believe in following up what my doctors say because they're all damn good. But do you have to ask for a test, or do they tell you they're going to give you a test? Because I have to go back tomorrow for chemotherapy. So what should I be?
You can discuss it with your doctor. I mean, you can simply discuss it. I mean, there is no need to do tests for everyone,
Yeah, I mean,
but,
I just don't know, because I mean, I have 6 doctors, so I just wondered.
you said
go to each one of them and say what?
The one who gives the chemotherapy, that's the one to discuss with. I will just discuss with that doctor.
Okay, great.
So there are certain criteria that are used to order the test for patients getting chemotherapy, but you have to go case by case and discuss with the doctor.
Dr. Platanias, since she is kind of high risk because she is having chemo, wouldn't they test her since she's having so much chemo?
Well, again, I don't know the details, and I don't want to talk for, and that's what we recommend is for some types of chemo we test for inpatient chemo. That's the criteria we have now for the most intense. For the other ones, I think it's case by case basis, and you need to discuss with your own doctor. We have to keep in mind some chemotherapy is very predisposes you much more than others to the virus. It's more immunosuppressive. It predisposes more to toxicities. But so we do test some patients before chemo, depending on the chemo. But and we may get to the point that we test everyone. But again, this is something that each patient has to discuss with their own doctor and do that jointly.
No, I understand that. I just was one thing because, I haven't been tested, but I get 6 blood, I get a full CBC every time I go. So would it show up in that if there was anything there?
No, the CBC is done for a very different reason, to make sure that the blood is strong enough to tolerate the chemotherapy. Again, I will just bring it up, ask your doctor who knows your case and follows
I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Doctor, I wanted to ask a question if I could. As far as, with the cases, like the patients you're seeing in the hospital, now before they said they're plateauing. My doctor, our doctor is out of Northwestern CDC, Central DuPage. He does a Friday afternoon thing all the time and gives us an update. He said that the cases were going down, like the hospitalization. They only had, the week before they had 80 patients. Last week they had 60. So he is seeing them going down. Now at Northwestern Chicago, downtown, are you seeing the same thing? There is,
there is, and Christine can also comment, but the number of cases right now in the hospital are less than they were earlier. There is a trend to go towards going down. So.
Well, that's good.
Exactly.
We also have Dr. Nikas on. Hi, Dr. Nikas. Thank you so much for everything.
I have a question are you guys seeing any of the COVID in the kids with those autoimmune symptoms at Northwestern that we've heard about in New York?
There is the Lurie Children's Hospital there. I don't know. I cannot answer that. And I suspect Christine probably cannot answer either.
No, that would be seen at Lurie. So we're
children. Yeah, it's a separate.
I know we're connected, but it's a kind of a completely separate system. But I haven't heard anything about it.
I have heard about kids with COVID there because I talked to the chief of kids oncology, but they have not mentioned that. He didn't mention anything about this syndrome, but it may well be.
Right. That's what I mean.
Syndrome. Yeah.
Does anyone else have any more questions?
I was just going to ask for the what's happening with plasma. Is that showing any promise? Do we have an ability to do that on a more widespread basis?
I think there is a whole program going on, and Northwestern, we are one of that, and it's being used. Christine, do you want to?
Yeah, we have a couple clinical trials that are starting with the plasma. So nobody really knows yet. We know that you can develop antibodies, but whether that will confer immunity if you give it to somebody else is unclear. It doesn't even necessarily mean that you have immunity if you've developed antibodies to this virus. It just means that you've been exposed, at least that we know. And so there's 2 clinical trials that I know of that are just starting this week with the plasma at Northwestern.
Nice, good.
Right.
So if
Christine,
you
you're
get,
going to give us positive reviews. Please work very hard on it so we can have the gala in November, please.
Sounds good.
so
And
let
Lenny,
me
we'll
ask,
have a gala in 40 years. As Chris said, the polio, it took 45 years to get rid of polio. And I believe during that point in time, herd immunity was taking in. So hopefully less and less people were getting polio. So my non-medical opinion is this thing is going to ratchet the same way. There's going to be fewer and fewer people catching it and dying until eventually we get something. But testing is overrated. I got tested 2 weeks ago and I was clean. Does that mean that today I'm clean or tomorrow I might not catch something? That's the problem. There has to be some kind of tool or test developed that can instantly tell you that you're clean today. I mean, they're talking about testing critical workers daily.
I see Dr. Nika is laughing. Dr.
Pardon
Nika
me?
somehow is,
I'm sorry?
we can't hear you, Dr. Nikas. We can't hear what you're saying. You're muted. We can't hear you. We can't hear what you're saying.
She's
We can't
muted.
hear you.
Yeah,
Can't hear
she's
Dr.
muted. Yeah. You know, let me disagree a little bit about the testing. The testing is extremely important. You know, as someone said, you know, it's like going to trying to deal with it, with a virus like this without testing is going to a knife fight with your eyes blind, you know, so blindfolded. The testing, the value of the testing is not just that you will be tested today and then, you know, tomorrow you may be positive. We know that. The value is that if you identify a case, you can narrow down, try to identify how it has try to track down other people and isolate them so they don't keep spreading it. So I think testing here, we had a challenge with the CDC, you know, originally, and that caused delays at the beginning. But now the testing has ramped up, and we can, yeah, I mean, now you can get tested pretty much, you know, much more than before. And I think it will be a very important thing to consistently do it and repeat it, and because we understand how deep is the virus within society. This moment, we don't know what percent of the population has the virus. It is probably much higher than we think. And when we try to track down cases, that's the way it can help us limit the spread. That's the idea there. So
Exactly. And I think, you know, until we get a vaccine, then we're not going to be able to, and we don't have to eradicate it completely before we can start gathering socially again. But I think at least the vaccine probably has to be out before major gatherings should start, at least without precaution.
Christine, what if the vaccine takes 3, 4, 5 years? Does that mean that we have to stop our life?
No, you don't have to stop your life, but maybe major gatherings should stop for that time. Or we're going to come up with some creative ideas on how to gather without endangering everybody, right? I think those things are important. Like, our health is important. And if we all get sick because we're at a party together, that's not helpful to anybody.
I think the most important thing, Eleni, is to convince anybody who says, I don't want to wear a mask because that's my right. No, it is not a right, because they endanger others.
Well, I did offer to buy masks for everyone that will attend the gala. I did offer to put sanitizers at every table in front of every person.
You said fancy ones, by the way.
Yeah, if you get
fancy ones. I'll order designer ones. And I'll order sanitizers in every person's, you know, plate in front of them.
Yeah. I think if people start wearing masks, everyone, and people understand the value of that, it's going to be much easier to control it than if not. You know, I think that's a key part, you know, there.
but let me ask you on the mask, because, you know, they say that the N95s are the only one that really protects you with the, instead of like a cloth mask or even the paper mask.
Yeah.
So not everybody's walking around, of course, with this, N95s, because those are, for the healthcare workers. So are we safe with just a cloth mask or a scarf?
Yeah,
There's
I
no
think,
safe.
let me just, the N95s are obviously the best. And some patients, especially vulnerable ones, it will be good if they can get an N95 or even KN95 to use. But the cloth masks don't protect much, but they have something. The regular masks, the surgical masks, still protect a little bit. But what they do, the most important thing they do, is they stop the spread. If, let's say, me and Eleni right now both have the virus, right? But we don't know it. But we decide to wear certain masks that may not protect us from others, but everybody in the room wears masks. That means that they cannot give it easily to others. And if the whole room wears the mask, the virus will not circulate. That's the idea there. So
Exactly.
Yeah.
It keeps it relatively contained to yourself. You're not protecting yourself from getting it elsewhere, but you're protecting, your generation of aerosol to give it to others.
Right.
And I don't know
although,
how you
and
do
there
the
is still some small protection. It's not real protection that you get with N95, but it's more than nothing, even for you.
Right.
That's
And if everybody's wearing them, then everybody's cutting it down too.
exactly, yeah, that's the
Yeah,
key.
that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. I think you can hear me now. Or
Hi, Dr. Nikas.
hello. Que χρόνια πολλά.
Thank
Χρόνια πολλά.
Thank you.
Sorry, I think something was wrong with my mic before. I'm not an epidemiologist, I'm not an infectious disease specialist, but as you see from all the experts right now, what we have for sure is the social distancing, the hygiene, and the protection for the mask. And so it's up to everybody to, show responsibility. If we want to try to go back to life, because we all want and we need to go back to life as fast as we can, but we just have to adopt the measures that at least are available for us right now. And hopefully medicine is going faster. So we're going to be some new, some advances for treatment, for vaccines, for antibodies. I mean, in our institution, they're testing all healthcare providers, but still the antibody test is not reliable right now to tell you much. So you really have to continue to practice social distancing. And also if we see in schools like colleges, everybody has these big discussions how, the students will be able to go back, like schools, any kind of these areas where big gatherings are happening. So we have to practice these measures. It's the best we can do.
Now, how they said you can have a group of like 10 people. If there's people like in a house, and there's, do you have to keep the social distancing even in the house, correct?
Yeah, especially.
Yes.
It is a problem.
Ideally.
It is a big problem. It's a problem. Even young kids, we have our kids that they're asking us to socialize with their friends and we don't let them. It's heartbreaking in a way, but at least we try to do as best as we can, at least at the beginning when we don't know much. And as time is evolving and we get to know much, hopefully it's going to be easier for everybody.
Well, I think a good project for us to work on is we have to proceed with the Wings to Cure Gala in November, whether it's 1,500 people like Eleni wants or 500 people. I think what we need to do is draw upon all the great doctors we have here to help us come up with a way that we could have a meaningful gala and experience, but do it in as safe a way as possible.
How about
So maybe we have some
suits?
mass contests.
Hazmat suits or something we can wear, or a hazmat. We'll get our designers to make hazmat dresses.
But I was going to say, I don't know how you guys do the extraordinary work that you do, doctors, and you do extraordinary work. But further, your ability to do it wearing the N95 mask, put one of those things on and you can barely breathe or move 20 feet.
Yeah, yeah.
Or it might, that's a great idea, or it might be a thought to move these events at a time when the weather is better, so someone could be at an outside area rather than, you know, have to book in, you know, indoors event.
I think it will also depend on whether the state is. The state has different phases, phase 1, 2, 3, 4.
But
So
they're
we'll
changing.
see.
Dr. Platanias, they're changing. They
They're
had said
changing.
not to open the restaurants. Now they said, you know, that's why you don't know what to believe anymore. Because let's face it also, it's a year of elections. There's a lot of political gameplay also, a lot of it. Because as we can see, even from our governor, he wanted to open the outside restaurants in 1 month. All of a sudden he goes, well, cases are going down, the hospitals they're having less patients, more recovery, more. So let's open everything up next week, the 1st of the month. So you don't know what to believe anymore.
Yeah,
well,
people are not going to tolerate.
That's why there should be no. You see, this is a problem that politics should have zero in.
Yes.
You know.
Bravo.
So these are facts. I think the data they are following right now is they look at the number of cases that is dropping, and I've been watching it. There is a flattening happening in Illinois, and I think the reason they're talking about reopening some restaurants under certain circumstances is because the numbers look like they're getting better. But this could change, you know. Again, I mean, politics is terrible of any kind of politics from any side. Should be totally out of the. I mean, even politics for what drug to take, that's crazy. I mean, this should be. I mean, this is an objective thing, medicine. It should be totally out of any politics. So.
Yeah, exactly. And I think as we open up, we'll get a better sense of when things are actually getting better and when things are not. You know, we'll have to play that by ear as we open up the country slowly. Anyways, I'm really sorry, Eleni, but I have to get going. But I really wanted to thank you for putting together this call.
Thank you,
Christine. Thank you for everything. Thank you.
Appreciate you all.
We appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
Actually,
bye.
Thank you.
In the next meeting, when we do the next one, I'm going to try, I couldn't do it today, but I'm going to try to bring a collaborator and friend of mine from Canada who is a virologist and did some of the early trials. She did a trial with interferon in China, I mean, with collaborators, and from before when the SARS epidemic. So we will try to get a little bit more global. We can understand about some.
That's great.
Perfect.
Awesome. Well, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Enjoy
Okay,
the flowers.
Bye.
Anyone
Bye,
else
honey.
wants to ask any more questions with Dr. Platania?
Doctor, what is the main entry point for the virus? Is it the nose and the mouth?
Is the respiratory tract. So
Yeah,
it's
but
going
how
to
does it get in
inhale.
there? Nose and the mouth?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
You
how
inhale
about
it.
gargling with Listerine like I do multiple times a day, the strong stuff with alcohol, and putting a little Neosporin in your nose with a Q-tip?
No, don't put Neosporin in your nose.
Huh?
No, I wouldn't do that. But
No?
gargling, I mean, if you're using like mouthwash is, I mean, I don't think it protects you. Let me put
It
like
won't
this.
kill germs? It won't kill the virus if it's in your mouth?
Yeah, but the problem is that the virus moves fast, you know.
Oh, okay.
By the time you inhale it, you know, if someone coughs next to you, and it goes all the way deep inside, it doesn't wait, it doesn't sit in your mouth. You know, that's the problem. So I don't think this thing, I don't think these things make much difference, you know.
Psychologically, it helps me.
Psychologically, yes, I can see that, yeah. The reality is that we don't have any good drug right now. All this, there is no good choice this moment that we know works and that we should be using. And the hope is I think the best hope is this drug remdesivir but it's not great either. Don't think it's something dramatic, you know. We need more research. We're doing a lot of research, by the way, with the help of the Hippocratic Foundation. I should bring Frank Lenny one day here to talk about the research we're doing too.
Can you give us an update, because I know I want to say this, and I want to say that I'm very grateful to everyone that funded, that supported last year's gala. The other day, everyone, we handed over $800,000 check to Dr. Platanias.
Oh,
I deeply thank each and every one of you, because all of you helped raise all this funds. Right now, we also send out a letter requesting for everyone to fund this exceptional and very challenging research that they're doing on COVID. Dr. Platanias, can you please tell us, give us an update on what kind of research are you doing that the Hippocratic, is funding
Sure.
COVID?
Yes, so we have funded several projects, some directly related to my research with Frank and Diana, and I'm going to bring him to talk, and I can give you an update there. And it goes back to this, there is a substance of the human body called interferon. It's how the immune system fights infections. You know, our body is protected, and Lina is still on, right? Are you here? Dr. Chukas is here. Anyway, so there is this substance, this immune substance that protects our body. Now this virus has found a way to shut it down. It goes there and somehow blocks the defense mechanism that our body has, the interferon. So we have funded projects to understand how the virus does this, because if we understand what it does, maybe we can stop it. But most importantly, we have one sort of lab experiments that are going right now. There is the virus, in order to enter the cells, it needs a door in the cell. Let me put it simply. It needs what we call a receptor. It needs to go and open the door of the cell and get in. So it finds a door that is a receptor, as we call it. And we know what is this receptor. And we know that it's regulated by interferon, this immune substance. And this is an area that we have been working for many years in my lab, because we think it's important in cancer. But now we think it's important for COVID too. So we have been testing different drugs. We have studied this pathway, this research area for a long time. And we have been trying to develop drugs for a different reason. And now we're testing them to see if these drugs close the door to COVID, let me put it like this, like decrease this receptor. And we have some very recent stuff. We just started very recently. We have some leads right now. There are some drugs. There is one drug that we see some activity. That doesn't mean this is not a drug that you can give it in the clinic right now, but it could be something that could be developed in the future. So we do stuff like this, try to understand how to block the entrance of the virus in the cells. You know.
And this is what we're funding, the Hippocratic.
Right. And also we have funded other projects. We have, I can give you more detail with Frank next week. Another one is what I mentioned, is done by someone else, trying to see how the virus attacks the cells to block the immune response. And then there are other projects. There is one other thing is trying to, as I said before, we collaborate with the NCI and we're helping them to develop big antibody tests. So we have invested to create a banking of serum for COVID patients, and there is a coordinated national response that can be used to help the antibody test development. There are many different projects, and we can, it's probably the most active area right now, because that's considered an essential area, COVID research, you know.
I see that Mr. Carajalios is here, and I want to personally thank him for securing $1 million for Dr. Platanias and his research. Thank you, Thank you, Mr. Carajalios. And I know the first payment of 250,000 came. So Dr. Platanias, you've got to do a lot of work. You have a lot of work.
Yeah, that one, we will not use it for COVID. That we use for, because let's not forget, cancer is a big
Cancer,
problem.
absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
so that one will only use for the hematologic malignancies
Absolutely.
research. Peter knows, and I'm grateful to Peter for his support.
We thank you, Mr. Carajalios, for securing that money for us. We appreciate it.
That's awesome. I'm going to go with Peter because I won't get your last name. I'll blow it. But that's magnificent.
Thank you, Peter. We can't hear you.
You're
We
muted.
can't hear you.
You're
We
muted.
Muted.
Can you text him, Katina, that he's muted?
Okay, I just
He's
got
off,
it.
he's off.
So it's good. Yeah, it is a wonderful thing to be able to have physicians and researchers like Dr. Platanias and his team be able to think outside of the box, because that's where new frontiers exist. And with his intelligence and his ability to apply his background and his knowledge along with his team, we are confident there's going to be new ways to be able to fight this devastating disease of cancer. We're so proud to support him. We are so proud to be associated with him. And I'm just so proud to be able to call him my friend.
Thank
know
you.
with a certainty that people
Thank
like
you.
Dr. Platanias are worthy of this kind of support.
Thank you. Thank you for securing
Thank you,
$1 million for him. Dr.
Thank you,
Platanias,
Peter. Thank you so much for everything.
we got to say that, you know what, we've made such headlines with the Hippocratic Cancer Research Foundation that last week, another wonderful man reached out to me, and Peter helped me. We drafted a letter. I think hopefully they will donate $1 million to us. A lot of people are coming out of the woodworks, and they are so amazed at what you're doing, especially after last year. The Dr. Frank is considered one of our best scientists, and I know the other scientists might be going up for a Nobel Prize, and especially what they're doing with the brain research. I think everyone is ignited. Everyone is so impressed with your work and with all the talented scientists and physicians that you were able to recruit from all over the world. We are very blessed to have Dr. Stoop. I know that every cancer institute in the world uses the Stoop theory to detect brain tumors. And we are so proud to serve you, Dr. Stoop, Dr. Argentos, Dr. Maha. And I think people are very amazed and very proud at all the incredible work that you're doing with your amazing world-renowned team.
Well, I'm very grateful to you personally, Eleni, as you know, always.
All of us.
This thing will never exist if it wasn't for your efforts, and I'm grateful to so many people here.
No, Dr. Platanias, no, it was, I have to say a big thank you to the late J. Michael, the young man that we lost so young at 33 years old. I have to say that I'm grateful to Nicole, that I was grateful to Danielle Samalovich. I was grateful to Ana Sofia Loomis, because I think we were the 5 first people that we had a meeting at Carmine's 9 years ago, and we said, how about doing this? How about moving mountains? How about supporting Dr. Platanias? Because he is one of the greatest researchers in the world. And I will never forget J. Michael, not knowing that we were gonna lose him 4 years later. He says to me, I could move mountains, and I proved that I could move mountains from 25 years old. Let's move mountains, Mrs. Busses, and let's save the world. And too bad, I'm sure he's looking down at us, and he's crying, and he's proud that, you know what, we are moving mountains and we are saving lives.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Eleni.
So
So
I think it's also amazing
all
how
of us, it's all of us.
it's amazing how Dr. Platanias has pivoted his immunology research to see how you can stimulate your immune system to treat cancer, to also understand, because you guys are using your knowledge in the lab to attack, to approach this COVID crisis. So I think we're honored and so proud to be supporting the fact that you guys can do that in such a short amount of time. I think is amazing.
Well, again, I'm deeply grateful to Eleni and everybody in the team for all this effort. You cannot imagine what a huge difference makes for us that we have this reliable support. It's extremely critical, and we can do things that we will never do. And I hope that we will continue delivering, because Eleni has told me that I cannot survive it unless we do something before the gala, right?
Unless we eradicate
and
cancer.
I don't want to mess with Eleni,
No, we got to eradicate cancer. We're losing too many people to cancer.
Okay.
We will all be losing a loved one, and we all have lost a loved one to cancer, Dr. Platanias.
I know, it's devastating disease. And right now is what someone mentioned earlier. We are so distracted with COVID that we forget the big collateral damage this moment of COVID is cancer patients.
Yes.
There were data that the number of new cases of cancer is down. And they are down not because we cure them it's because they don't go and they die at home. It's a terrible situation. So COVID disproportionately affects cancer patients, both because some of them are more sensitive, but also because many people don't take care of themselves. So it's really an emergency right now, and it's going to keep getting worse. And that's why we need to move on a little bit and open things up. So
we have to, and let's all pray that, God will empower, and God will give wisdom to all of you to hopefully find this cure very fast, or the vaccine, medication, whatever you have to find, so we can have our gala, because we did have a very successful gala last year. We had over 1,000 people, and I know I received numerous calls, and I'm sure a lot of you board members have also, wondering if we're going to have the gala, because everyone wants to participate. So, is there anybody else? Does anyone else have any questions, Nicole?
I don't know. Does anybody else? So we're going to see you in 2 weeks again, right? So I hope everyone has a happy Memorial Day, and thanks again to everyone for being here. And thank you, Dr. Platanias.
thank you. Thank you so much again for everything.
We also have, in 2 weeks, we also have the raffle. Dr. Platanias, you will be raffle from the post party, right, Nicole?
Yes. We're going to draw the name from the raffle that we had from the celebration we had a couple of months ago. So hopefully everyone can join us.
Okay, great. Thank you again, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Have a wonderful holiday. Be safe. Love you guys.
Love you.
Love you.
Love you guys. Be safe.
Bye.
Be safe.